Welcome, welcome. Good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to get started. I know a lot of times people kind of sit around and wait for people to come in, but I'm just going to say welcome, replay viewers, welcome, live viewers. Welcome to Trauma is Defeated, because trauma is defeated one step at a time. I am Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist, teaching you guys and reminding myself how important it is that we manage those symptoms from trauma. That's the feelings, thoughts, sensations, and impulses. We are learning how to value our mental health on this program. Trauma is defeated. We are learning how to value our mental health. Take responsibility for those feelings. One way we do that is we begin to acknowledge how we feel. Learn how to acknowledge what the feelings are so that we can own those feelings, so that we can take authority over our emotions. Okay, so we have to be willing to look inward. What is this? Is this anger? Is this frustration? Is this sadness? Is this grief? Is this happiness? Is this excitement? We have to learn how to manage those feelings. Is this fear? Am I in fear right now? And what do I need to do with this fear? We can all identify with trauma, deeply distressing, disturbing experiences. We have all experienced some form of trauma. We have lost loved ones. We have lost money. We have lost things. Some people, we've lost businesses and properties and homes. We have lost some very valuable relationships. We have ended some relationships that we thought was going to last forever. We have all seen someone, we have all experienced someone being used and abused or being hurt, people that we love being hurt. I have experienced my mother in abusive relationships. I have experienced being married twice and being married to an alcoholic and being married to a person that's mentally ill. I have suffered trauma from being a widow and then being divorced. I have suffered from trauma, just observing people that I love being hurt, but not only that, being hurt as a little girl, being burned and being hit by a car, being attacked by my mother's ex-boyfriend who decided he was going to murder me, her oldest daughter, after he realized she was not going to take him back. But what do we do with the trauma? We learn to take a look at it. We learn to stop running from it. We learn to stop hiding. We learn to admit, okay, I'm an incest survivor. Oh, okay. We learn to admit that some people have been raped or molested. God wants us to still be able to take a look at that and admit that it happened, because that's how we heal. We heal by not running from the problem or running from the issue. We heal by taking a look at what happened to us and owning it. Okay, that's what happened to me. That's my story. So what am I going to do with it? How do I take care of myself? How do I begin to love myself? How do I take back my power that I allowed to be in some cases, I gave it over. In some cases, some things just happened. Some things happened to me, and maybe I held on to it. I held on to the pain too long. I held on to the denial too long. I held on to the anger and frustration too long. And deep down inside, it's still there. But God says He can't heal. He cannot heal what we're not willing to admit. I lost my mother a year ago. And it took me some time to process that, because I was one of the ones that, I was mainly the one for 6 years who took her back and forth to the hospital, back and forth to get her chemo treatments and radiation treatments as the cancer came back 3 times. And on the third time, that's when she passed away. It came back very aggressively in her brain the second time, and then she died on September 19th of last year. So I had to take some time to process that things have changed. I'm not like the last time when we had to check her into hospice. I would just leave the room at some point and just go sit on the porch. And when she could still speak, she would tell family members, some of my siblings and children, what's going on with Ramona? I'm worried about Ramona. But Ramona needed to find a way to take care of herself as she was going through such a difficult situation. I had to learn to take care of myself. And I did it the best way I knew how. And sometimes when other people came to visit her, I would go and just sit on the porch. Maybe sometimes the dining room. Because it was very sad to me to know that this time things were different. This time I wasn't taking her to her doctor's appointment. This time I heard the doctors gave us a diagnosis that my mother had about 3 weeks left to live. Somebody say trauma. That's traumatic. So at some point I had to begin to acknowledge the feelings. How did I really feel about that? During the process, I was feeling some stress. During the process, I was feeling some anxiety on and off. But in the midst of it all, I could still feel God's presence. And I'm sure that's what helped me to deal with it and process it much better. But I remember when we went to view the body when she finally did die. And then I just broke down, standing next to her bed like a baby. That cry, that deep cry, that deep, deep cry. And some of you can understand what that feels like. But I needed to process that. I needed to process. And I gave myself permission to process. So that's where that stop running from our feelings thing comes in at. We have to give ourselves permission to feel. We have to give ourselves permission to feel. Even though it feels bad, that's how we heal. We heal by admitting it. We heal by admit that we're hurting. We heal by admitting that what happened to us did not feel so good. We heal by shedding those tears if we need to shed those tears. Some people punch a pillow because we don't want to be punching on people because we're hurting. And we don't want to hurt other people because we're hurting. But sometimes, there are healthy ways to deal with the frustration, the anger, the pain. Sometimes we go get some help. In 1992, I decided to get some help. That was 26 years ago. I decided to get some help because I was struggling with depression from my childhood. I was struggling with panic attacks from the trauma from my childhood. I told you guys my mother, did I finish telling you guys that? My mother's ex-boyfriend, I did tell you that my mother's ex-boyfriend decided he would murder me. What he did was I was 15 years old. He came through my bedroom window and stabbed me 3 times while I was sleeping and left me to drown in my own blood. And by the grace of God, I woke up and the whole situation was very traumatic. From the time I woke up, everything. I was blessed to get some help. My mother got me some help by a total stranger and his girlfriend. And I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I had a trach in my throat. And the doctors told my mother they weren't sure if I was going to be able to speak again. So it's so important that and I was an angry teenager because of that, because the guy didn't do a day in jail. He got off on circumstantial evidence. So I had to process that disappointment, process that anger. And as a teenager, of course, for a while, I acted out. A lot of us can relate to being young people and acting out. A lot of times young people act out because they're hurting. So we have to be careful about being too hard on them and very judgmental. And then there's characteristics, or sometimes we call it character defects. I like to call it survival mindsets come up because we experience trauma. And sometimes we have those triggers and then we're in our survival mindsets. don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. I don't know who to talk to, who I can trust. I'm not sure about my feelings. I don't want to feel. That comes from trauma. But God wants us to face that. God wants us to face that. And even sometimes when we feel like we got to control everything because we're afraid and we want to feel safe. But it's so important that we acknowledge the fact that when we are afraid, those controlling issues are triggered. And we're trying to fix people and give everybody advice and tell everybody what they need to do and what they shouldn't do, and we're trying to control everything around us. And if you get really controlling, people start running from us. So we have to be able to acknowledge when we're being controlling. When we're being controlling. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about acceptance transcends control. Acceptance transcends control. That means that it goes beyond. Acceptance goes beyond control. So it's real important that we accept some stuff that we have not wanted to accept. You know why? Because we've been feeling shame. I remember my sister, like I'm my dad's own. My dad was alcoholic. My mother and father broke up when I was very, very young, still a toddler. And I remember feeling ashamed because they weren't together, because my mother went on and had other relationships, and my mother and father never married. And then my sister and brother and we didn't have the same dad. I was my dad's only child. So my mother had 7 children after me, and we didn't have the same dad and mom exactly. And we used to feel ashamed about that. I remember as teenagers, if somebody asked us about it, it was like, oh, we were like almost like a deer in headlights. And sometimes we would talk about it so we could try to get the story together. Carrying shame that we weren't supposed to be carrying. And at some point we had to accept that. At some point I had to accept that I was carrying somebody else's shame, or feeling bad for something. Let's just say someone else. Let's just say my mother felt bad about that. And then I took it on as well. And sometimes we take on our parents' survival mindsets as well. Anyway, I'm going to read from a book called SelfEsteem. SelfEsteem, Tools for Recovery, because it's so important that we are building our self-esteem, that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're nurturing ourselves. And one way we do that is by acknowledging the way we feel and accepting the reality of what happened to us, and accepting the reality of what's going on in our lives right now and in society. Acceptance transcends control. It goes beyond. Our society places a high value on control. We think that it is a sign of strength, success, and good character. It is something we should strive for, an admirable quality. We are afraid of people who appear to be out of control, like the mentally ill, the junkies, the prostitutes, the alcoholics, people covered with tattoos, and other fringe people, as we call it, because that's based on our perception, right? We are even afraid to get close to friends and relatives who have problems like obesity, anorexia, or some addictive behaviors, or chronic lying, because they appear to be out of control, connected to something within themselves that we don't understand. We don't want to face that this same something exists within us, a dark side, a propensity for doing what is not in our own best interests, a need to escape. This fear comes from our low self-esteem. We have blown our problems and negative self-image way out of proportion and assumed that if we weren't in control, we would only make bad choices and chaos would reign in our lives. We think we need control because we don't trust our own goodness. And we don't trust our own goodness because we don't know ourselves very well. We operate under the assumption that we are bad. But it's just not true. It's not true. But we operate under the assumption that we are bad because we made some unhealthy choices, because some things have happened to us and we have experienced trauma and we have trusted some of the wrong people. But God says trauma is defeated if we're willing to change. It's defeated if we are willing to change and trust Him. We have difficulty seeing our true nature, that this dark side per se of ours is only a small part of who we are. It exists, but so does our bright side, and we can choose which one to treasure. The fact is that if we took the time to know who we are, we would better understand who those fringe people are as well. They have the same innate value as human beings as we do and are a source of great love just as we are. So we have to have compassion for those that we feel is different from us or maybe quite don't understand us. They have the same kinds of complex reasons for their problems, so they have problems too, as we have for ours. Genetics, family backgrounds, cultural influences, etc. Instead of judging them, we can give them compassion. And in so doing, realize that we deserve the same. We deserve the same. We have to stop being so hard on ourselves and give ourselves permission to make a mistake and be willing to learn from those mistakes instead of condemning ourselves. Because guilt, shame, and condemnation does not come from God. So we do that to ourselves. Control can become a way of life if you believe that your happiness, self-worth, success, passion, relationships, etc. depend on it. And a lot of us do. We think all of those things I just named depends on control. You can spend time and energy trying to get to a point where everything, including yourself, is a certain way, thinking that then you will be able to relax and enjoy. You feel good or bad according to how closely situations conform to your expectations. And sometimes our expectations are unrealistic because we're in survival mindset and we're expecting people to be perfect. But we're not perfect. And sometimes we're expecting ourselves to be perfect. That's why we're expecting other people to be perfect. In everybody's life, though, there is always something that is not going according to plan. The universe rarely conforms to our expectations. It's like trying to keep 10 ducks in a row. Invariably, they wander. Life is unpredictable, and basing anything on being able to control it is futile. It's futile. Control can become an obsession. Some people are very controlling, and you can tell that it is an obsession for them. Though when you believe that your happiness, self-worth, success, etc. depend on getting rid of one specific problem, you think that if you can control it, the drinking, the weight, a bad job, some bad habit, then everything else in your life will fall into place. I remember, I think I told you guys my husband was an alcoholic as well. And I remember, before I got help 26 years ago, I remember as a part of me that was just thinking, if he would just stop drinking, everything would be all right. Or I remember when my dad was drinking. He died in the 80s. But I remember when I was a little girl, deep down inside, it was like drinking is the problem. If he would just stop drinking, everything would just fall into place. Control becomes your top priority and consequently gives your problem life. I remember as a little girl telling my ex, saying to my dad, please, daddy, don't drink. Daddy, please don't drink. And I probably was like 4 or 5 years old. That's why white-knuckled sobriety is not real recovery. It is just more obsession and more control based on your low self-esteem. Real recovery is based on high self-esteem, gained by establishing an honest, loving relationship with yourself, not by trading one obsession for another. Would you rather trade one prison cell for another, or be completely free? Or be completely free? I'll just say this. Well, before I decided to get some help in 1992, I didn't have a good relationship with myself. I was just hoping if I can just keep things under control, and if I can just fix my ex-husband, well, he's deceased now, that one, everything would be okay. So a lot of times we deceive ourselves out of ignorance, but remember, when we're in survival mindset, that's how we're thinking, that we're kind of responsible to just keep everything under control. There are simply many things which you cannot control, no matter how hard we try. You have no control over others. Now, I had to go get some help to find out and to realize and accept the fact that I had no control over my husband. No matter what I said to him, he had to want to get sober. He had to want to face his trauma, his issues from his past. I could not do that for him, no matter what I said to him, no matter how good I was to him. It was not my responsibility. It's not our responsibility to try to control our grown children either. The past, true impossibilities, nature, aging, and some situations we have no control over. Codependents cannot change the behavior of their loved ones. A child of a dysfunctional family cannot undo the truth of an abused childhood. We can't undo the truth of an abusive childhood, but it's our responsibility to take a look at it and face it. Accept the truth so that we can take back our power. An alcoholic cannot change their biological response to alcohol, not the biological response. That's why they need help. Anybody with any addictive behavior, anyone. We cannot control the biological response, but we can learn how to manage, how to manage it, okay? I'll say manage it. Because control might not be such a great word right now. Okay, there's no controlling earthquakes or hurricanes. Father Time is benevolent but persistent, and for all their ranting and raving, compulsive gamblers cannot run the race, kick field goals, or determine the roll of the dice. Do you have to feel bad about these unwanted realities? Or is it possible to feel good even though you are at the mercy of things out of your control? I had to learn how to take back my power. And when we take back our power, then we can learn how to feel good and accept that there are just some things that we have no control over. We can pray about things. We can support people. But we have no control over some things, many things. There also exist in your life things over which you do have control, but which you may not be willing or ready to change. And that's how it was with my husband. And there's all something that we're holding on to that we don't want to let go of, right? It could be a person, place, or a thing, right? Many of our problems fall into this category. We know we have the ability to do something about our situations. You know, that relationship you should let go of, or that friendship we just don't want to let go of. There's something in all of our lives that we need to let go of, but we won't let go of it. We think we should change. We wish we could change, but we don't. And this gives us great fuel for the fire of low self-esteem, because when we're not willing to make certain changes in our lives, knowing that we do, if we would just make the right choice, or we would ask for help, and we don't ask for help, deep down inside in our souls, we know there's something that we need to let go of. We need to work on this. And if we don't let it go, it damages our self-esteem. If we're making choices and we're not loving ourselves, it damages our self-esteem. We now have proof that we are weak, shameful, and rotten. So in other words, that's what the self-esteem says to us. You know, you could have been let that go. Why you staying in that relationship? Why you let that happen to you? You just ain't no good. You ain't no good. You bad, or whatever. Subconsciously, we tell ourselves these things. That's why it's so important that we pay attention to the way we feel, because our feelings will let us know what are we saying to ourselves. Because we may need to change our thoughts. Are you calling yourself stupid? Are you calling yourself dumb and bad? If we do that to ourselves, what we're doing is we're attacking our own self-worth. We're attacking our self-esteem. We're abusing ourselves. This causes depression and self-pity, and all this other stuff just comes up that's only hurting us. Not only do we have our problem, but we are powerless to stop it. That's how we feel. Welcome. Welcome. How are you? We become our own worst enemy, and we expend all our energy in the battle for control. In every instance, acceptance will transcend control. Acceptance goes beyond control. When there is something that you don't like about yourself or your life, something that exists right at this moment, you have a choice. You and I have a choice between resisting or accepting its presence. Your choice, my choice, will determine your choice will determine your experience. My choice will determine my experience. So the key is choice. I remember when I got some help in 1992. I spent 28 days in the Tampa Bay, Florida rehab, by the way, because I was going through post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety and so much depression. And I remember maybe like the first couple of days or so, that first week, I was listening and I said, let me see, God, is this where I'm supposed to be? And then at some point I remember I had actually asked God to help me, because I knew it had to be more to life than what I was going through, and the dysfunctional relationship I was in with my alcoholic, and some stuff I had experienced from my childhood as well. But choice is the word that stuck out, that I kept hearing. Choice, like, wait a minute, I have choices. I do have choices. And what happened when we're in our survival mindset, somewhere along the line, we're so busy trying to fix and control. At the same time, we feel like we don't have any choices. And some of us grew up feeling like our voice was taken away from us. So then we tend to grow up and we forget that we do have choices. If one choice doesn't work, we can make another choice. So that's why I stayed. That's why I began, and in that rehab I became teachable. And for the past 26 years, my life has not been perfect, but I became teachable. God wants us to be teachable. Your choice will determine your experience. If you resist by hating it, dwelling on it, and obsessing about control, you give it life. Feel bad about yourself and remain stuck. If you accept it without your judgments and shame, here you go. You take away its power. So there you go, right there. I had to learn to drop the judgment. I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn to stop judging the people and blaming people that I felt that had hurt me. I had to stop blaming and shaming myself for choosing the wrong partners. I also gained a revelation of how the trauma from my past had affected my mind and my thinking and my emotions, and that there was some wounds in my soul that I needed God to heal. But I had to get honest with myself first. And a lot of us are not honest with ourselves. We hide behind things, people, places, and things, instead of owning those things and taking a look at those things. Instead of accepting truth, we begin to hide, and we blame ourselves and blame other people and shame ourselves and shame other people, and we tell ourselves we're not going to forgive, and we'll hold on to grudges and things like that, and we judge and shame. And what that does is that keeps us stuck, that attacks our self-esteem. And then we're just still trying to control everything so that we can feel safe. But we do have choices. We can choose to stop judging. We can choose to take a look at the situation. I think it's a good idea to judge the situation. Judge the situation. Take a look at it and say, you know what, this is not for me. This is not working. That person is, this relationship is not working. That's not a healthy person. Look at the situation and then make a conscious decision to make a healthy choice about your situation or our situation. That's what I had to do. That's what I had to do when I was in that dysfunctional relationship. So we take back our power, and we take back our power from the survival mindsets that we think is protecting us, which is not protecting us. Accepting something doesn't mean that you like or approve of it, only that you are willing to accept reality and release your problems, hold on you, and your hold on it. So we all are going through some problems. We all have something that we need to work on. And we have to accept reality about it and stop trying to fix and control it and ask for help. Or if we stop judging ourselves, then we have more management and we can take authority over whatever it is that keeps trying to keep us stuck, or whatever it is that's attacking our self-esteem. We want to become the best version of ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to be honest with ourselves, accept reality, and do what I call a self-check. Check in with ourselves. Take a look at pay attention to the way we feel, because that's going to help us determine the way we are thinking. Because we may need to change our thoughts, and we may need to make some healthier choices so that we can become the best version of ourselves. Then you are free to think clearly about what to do next. Your time and energy are not caught up in resistance, but rather in taking constructive action. You might fear that accepting your problem would remove your motivation to change. Paradoxically, the opposite is true, because acceptance allows you the freedom to love yourself. I love that. I had to accept some things, and once I accepted some things, I began to love myself, and I began to change some things in my relationships and other areas of my life and within myself, and ask God for help. Shortcomings and all. So that includes some of my shortcomings. But I became teachable. It's so important that we become teachable. Getting down on yourself, trying to beat yourself into change, or hating yourself for not being ready yet never makes anything positive happen. So those times that I was beating up on myself, Self-pity came in. Fear was there. Judging myself. Whatever it is I was trying to change, I'm here to tell you. I'm a witness. I could not change those things until I began to accept the fact that I was human, that I deserved to be, that I also too deserved empathy and compassion, that I deserved to nurture myself through whatever it was that was hindering me. And then I began to see the change, especially as I began to trust God to help me as well and stop feeling like I had to fix it and then go to God. I had to accept myself. I had to learn how to accept other people and situations and circumstances. Once again, accepting reality and accepting the things that I could not change. So accepting yourself takes the emphasis off control and puts it firmly where it belongs, on loving yourself. On loving yourself. Now let's examine these ideas in the following hypothetical situations. Situation A. A problem that cannot be controlled. Jackie's problem is that she is an incest victim. The abuse happened, and therefore cannot be controlled. It is possible, however, for Jackie to change her feelings about the abuse. Now, okay? And she has two options available to her. Remember, I say we have to pay attention to how we feel about what happened to us. So we got two options. Jackie has two options. So basically giving you guys an example, right? So remember, Jackie is an incest survivor. She's an incest victim. I'm going to say it again. Jackie's problem is that she is an incest victim. The abuse happened and therefore cannot be controlled. It is possible, however, for Jackie to change her feelings about the abuse. See, that's what I had to do. That's what I learned to do. And she has two options available to her. Option number one, resistance. Jackie wishes she had not been sexually abused by her father and constantly relives the horror. She thinks that she should be able to put it behind her, and she shouldn't be so controlled by something that happened years ago. If she could just forget it, everything would be fine. She ignores the stomach aches she has at night, her frequent angry outbursts, and general feelings of sadness. She blames herself and her father, often dwelling on the event instead of living in the moment. That's another thing I had to do. I still have to practice every day, is living in the moment and not reliving the things that happened to me. She hates her father, but is not honest with him about her feelings. She wishes she wasn't so afraid of men and doubts her ability to ever have a happy life. Nothing ever seems to change. The outcome? Jackie feels bad and has low self-esteem. That's the outcome. That's the outcome. Because she has given her power away to something that happened to her years ago. Let's see option two. Before I say more, let's see what option two is. Option two is acceptance. Acceptance. So Jackie wishes she had not been sexually abused by her father, but accepts the fact that it happened and is doing things to overcome its devastating effects on her life. Get some help. In therapy and in conversations with family members, she has come to a better understanding of why it happened. See, I can relate to this. She has discovered that her father had a frightening and lonely childhood. with a father who beat him regularly and a mother who looked the other way. Jackie knows that this does not justify his actions, but she also knows that it was not her fault. She did not provoke the abuse and could not have prevented it. She realizes that a lot of her problems are a result of her low opinion of herself due to that abuse. And now she is experiencing feelings of compassion for both her father and herself. This is how we heal. This is how we heal, people. Jackie chose to confront her father in order to release some of her guilt. I had to do that. I was told to write a letter, so I wrote a letter to a particular person. She now has a more honest relationship with him, although not a close one. Her growing freedom from the problem is also giving her a healthier sexual identity. Her growing freedom from the problem is also giving her a healthier sexual identity and is improving her relationship with men. So ladies, those of you who are still wounded and still holding on to the wounds, how are you going to be in a healthier relationship if you're not owning, taking back your power and accepting reality, being willing to shift take a look at things differently so that your perspective can change. Okay? So it's important that we get a new perspective by being willing to look at things differently. And that's for the sake of our mental health. Like I said in the very beginning, trauma is defeated also as we're willing to learn to value our mental health. People are emotionally and spiritually and physically sick and ill and getting diseases because they refuse to accept reality. They choose to stay in denial. They don't want to feel their feelings. So that pain turns in on them. That denial turns in on them because we weren't created to carry all of that, and we weren't created to carry that anxiety, all of that pain. Anyway, Jackie's outcome is this. This is Jackie's outcome, okay? Option 2, acceptance, and this is Jackie's outcome. Jackie feels good about herself now. Jackie feels good about herself now. Situation B. Situation B, okay? A problem that can be controlled. Juan's problem is that he is a compulsive eater. Even though it is possible for Juan to change his eating behavior, there are 3 options available to Juan. So let's see what they are. Number 1 is change. This is the most straightforward option because Juan knows that compulsive eating is something that he can change. What's more, he is willing to tackle it and the issues that perpetuate it. He both wants to and is able to change his behavior. He concentrates on feeling good about himself, even though his looks are different than society's ideal. He is using the energy he spent controlling his food obsession in positive ways. He understands how and why he uses food, accepts what this has done to his life, and forgives himself. He practices mindful eating and tries to differentiate between his emotional and physical cravings. This is something that I am also being delivered from. He has developed a number of supportive, caring friendships and wants to begin therapy or attend meetings of some kind. Juan's focus is on feeling good about himself and nurturing himself with healthier eating habits. But he is not necessarily going to diet. Weight is not his main concern. The outcome, Juan feels good about himself. Option 2, resistance. Option 2, resistance. Juan is capable of change, stopping his compulsive eating, but he is not willing or ready to change at this time. His energy is poured into wishing things were different. He thinks that if he could get his eating under control, he would deserve nicer clothes, better relationships, and a happier life. When he is thin, he will relax and enjoy. But at the moment, he is on guard against his cravings. Sometimes the pressure is too much and he eats to escape, feeling bad about himself for doing so. Then he eats to escape those bad feelings. Juan is caught in a vicious cycle. He understands the negative consequences, but feels so bad about himself that change seems impossible. Juan is tired, unhappy, and stuck. The outcome? Juan feels bad and has low self-esteem. So because he refuses to change, hold on, guys. See you, sweetie pie. So because Juan has made a decision not to change at the time, it's attacking his self-esteem. You know why? Because change isn't, because we God has created us where we might not like change sometimes, but God created us in a way where we need change. And we really can change. Because we have a free will. We may need some help sometimes, but we can change. So when we do something that when we don't do something that deep down inside we know we can do, it attacks our self-esteem. It makes us feel bad about ourselves. So because Juan wasn't ready, he chose not to get any help or do anything different. Sat around wishing and a hoping and a wishing. Juan feels bad and has low self-esteem. Or his self-esteem is just not changing, getting better. So what's the option number 3? Option number 3 is acceptance. Acceptance is so much better. Juan accepts that although he is able to change, he is just not ready to do so at this time. He accepts that he compulsively overeats and affirms his self-worth in spite of it. He understands that compulsive overeating serves him and is careful not to judge himself harshly for needing it sometimes. He devalues the behavior and values himself. He dresses nicely, takes care of himself, has good relationships, and tries not to waste energy by dwelling on this particular trait. He accepts that there are consequences to his food obsession, such as potential or realized health problems, and that there is a social prejudice against people who are overweight. Lately, Juan is eating less and instead is choosing to spend more time gardening, talking with friends, and reading, or counting calories like I do. I'm working out or going to exercise. The outcome is Juan feels good about himself. So acceptance. So Juan accepted the fact that he's overweight. Yes, he needs to lose weight. He accepted the fact that, okay, I have choices. I can make some choices. So a lot of times what we have to do is accept. We have to accept first. Accept reality. Accept what's going on, where we are right now. Accept what happened, and then and accept the things that we cannot change, and then there's things that we can change, and we have to accept that we can do it. We have to be loving and patient with ourselves and make the changes gradually. But sitting around wishing, that's resistance. Just sitting around wishing and hoping and not doing anything, that's not going to help, and that's an attack on the self-esteem. Okay, I thought that was pretty good, don't you? I thought that was pretty good. So here's an exercise. I'm not going to give you all these exercises, but here's one. Describe something negative in your life that you cannot control. So that's a question for you. Number 1, describe something negative in your life that you cannot control. So you might want to write that down, think about it. You might know the answer right off the top of your head. Number 2. Let me see. Number 2, describe something negative in your life that you theoretically can control. Theoretically can control. That's it. Let's keep it. Let's just keep it right there, okay? Because I can go on and on. And for the sake of time, I'm going to end it there. So that's 2 questions you can think about. Okay, we have to remember that acceptance transcends control. It goes beyond the range of control, okay? It surpasses control. So we want to focus more on acceptance so that we can take our power back. All right? Welcome replay viewers. Welcome live viewers. I'm Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist, defeating trauma one step at a time because trauma is defeated. Thank you for joining me on Trauma is Defeated. I will be back very soon. Very soon. So continue to follow me on Facebook and continue to follow me on Periscope and Twitter as well. Thank you for joining me. My website is traumadefeated.com. www.traumadefeated.com. If you have any questions for me, if you would like me to come and speak, if you want some coaching or training, you can hit me up at Ramona@traumadefeated.com as well, okay? So what I want you guys to remember also is that trauma is defeated. We're taking back our power. We're learning to reject that shame. We're learning to own our stories. We're learning to change our perspectives. And we're learning to ask for help. You are not alone. We've all experienced some form of trauma. Take back your power. I took back my power 26 years ago by reaching out and asking for help. And I knew God. I prayed to God, but I was stuck in my survival mindset. And there were times when I thought God was angry with me because I felt like I was struggling to control instead of accepting that I needed God's help and I needed whatever help God said He would send me. Because remember also that God does work through people. Okay, God works through people. So we don't have to, He didn't mean for us to do it all by ourselves. Okay, so thanks for joining me. God bless you. Remember that you are fearfully, wonderfully, and marvelously made. You are created in the image and likeness of God. You are spirit. You are spirit. God's a spirit, but you also have a soul. We have a soul, and it's our responsibility to take authority to accept that in our soul we're not perfect, but God is always with us and He loves us. He loves us. Okay, so take life one day at a time. Do those self-checks. Check in with yourself. Feel your feelings because you might need to change your thoughts, okay? So make a positive change. Stop and think about something that you know you can change. And love yourself and build your self-esteem, okay, by making that change. I'm Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist. I'll be back very soon. God bless.